Sunil Subramaniam as well joining in right here in our studio. Sunil, there was something for all in this budget, but from a market perspective, what would you say is the key takeaway? Because there's definitely that fillip to consumption, there's a fillip to housing, he's given you more money in your hands, and of course direct benefits for in case you want a second home.
Correct, but for me, from a market perspective, right, two things, right? In the medium term, earnings across all these sectors would get a boost because of the budget impact, because more income, more consumer will purchase more. But more importantly, I think the market had an uncertainty discount around the ability of the BJP to come back to power. I think what this has done in my mind is it's reduced that uncertainty factor and that premium. So I expect overall valuations without that premium so much to actually lift the market up. Because continuity. If you look, the government over the last 4 years has done a lot of work on infrastructure, roads, all of that. But it needs to get close to completion. So in the market, there's an uncertainty. If a different kind of government comes, would they go and roll back this stuff? Would that then set back the economy? So I think the market, because of the election results in the midterm, was apprehensive about the fact that if Mr. Modi is not able to use this vote on account in a way to get back some of the vote bank that he had lost in the midterm election. And that, I think, Piyush Goyal has done a brilliant job, because he's addressed the unorganized labor segment, which is poor. He's addressed the rural population, and he's addressed the middle class through a tax break. So I think that will give a confidence to the electoral pundits that the NDA government can come.
So you're saying that this budget speech has ensured that there will be a victory later this year?
I think that's a very strong statement. It's reduced the uncertainty that will they come back or not. I think to say that it will win. Because see, ultimately a large part of the population doesn't follow the budget. Okay, so how this is communicated now by the BJP at the electoral hustings?
Yeah, but it's about communication, right? So who's to say that tomorrow Congress in its manifesto doesn't come out with promises, as they have with the UBI?
Yeah.
I think the point that we are trying to make is, Sunil, at the end of the day, this is a policy statement. This is a statement of promise. Even for the exemption, it's essentially targeted for the next year. So that main exemption of up to 5 lakhs on disposable income is for FY20. My thing is that at the end of the day, I don't know how it puts one in an advantageous position versus the other, because promises is something that will be made across the board in the run-up to the elections now.
Yeah, but I think
they use this forum to, of course, articulate their vision, but you'll hear more and more from other parties as well.
Yes, you will, but I think the credibility factor. See, if you look at it, this government had introduced a lot of pain through demonetization, through all kinds of stuff, right? So with the very absence of those negatives from a budget perspective, right? The second aspect is that a government in power always has the capacity to start implementing. So you've noticed this rural thing that they have promised the farmers. They backdated it from 1st December 2018. So the 20,000 crores actually gets distributed in cash. Now imagine, it's a government able to distribute cash of 20,000 crores to that. So that's hard cash, and that's not a promise.
Sure. Yeah,
right?
that's not.
So I think that's one thing. Second, like I said, it's a perception, market's perception of this, right? So that's why when she said that, are you certain that this is going to help them in the election? I said it's not about that. The market plays on the perception. And I'll tell you where this plays. In FII flows coming in. See, FIIs would also like to see continuity, whether you and I like it or not. FIIs have a very strong...
Everyone likes consistency.
No, not just consistency. Mr. Modi.
And markets hate change.
Yeah, and they like Mr. Modi. They like that. So, to the extent they have an uncertainty premium around India, there's an election year, what's going to happen? Let's say earlier they were 50% not sure. Today they'll be 60, 70% sure, right?
But will the certainty around policy consistency be associated only with if Prime Minister Modi comes back, or if the NDA comes back with another Prime Minister?
I think that that's a $1 million question. From an FII perspective, I would say Modi is important. I think clearly he has been the chief marketing officer of India Inc. right? So I think that factor you have to consider, that yes, Mr. Modi's continuance is an important factor for foreign.
He's the captain of the ship.
Yes.
Okay, let's move forward now. Now, one event is behind us. We can already see the market absorbing that in. How critical is it that, given the macro environment, come next week on Thursday, you have the RBI now cut rates? Because the bond market is already reacting in a fashion, and it's absorbing the budget outcome.
Yeah, so I think bond market is factoring in the projected government expenditure increase and the financing. Now the RBI governor has multiple factors to take into account. So what does he take into account? Projected government's borrowing program, expected crude prices, expected food prices and the effect of inflation, and the growth in the economy, right? If you balance all these factors, right, I think that market had thought that there would be a rate cut coming up in the RBI policy, right? I think what market is now saying I think it's going to be a pause rather than a cut, because now this new fiscal math of borrowing, Mr. Shaktikant Das has to factor in. So what's he going to do? Market is uncertain, but I think some commentary which comes up in the coming days, the commentary of the RBI, even if they don't do a rate cut, I think will be towards a softer thing of supportive thing. I think the bond markets will bounce back is my read of that.
Subject to that.
For an investor now, let's move forward. There are clearly stops announced for autos. Consumption will get a boost. You've got banks which are going to benefit from a couple of announcements. But I think the bigger fillip has come in, or rather the biggest fillip has come in for the down and out real estate sector. It came at the fag end of this speech. We were all waiting for it because there was that market expectation. Do you think this is the sector, considering it's so under-owned, so beaten down, can investors now look at real estate from an investment perspective, or is it at best only going to be a short-term trade?
No, I think there's a significant re-rating which will happen to the real estate sector, because it has been on the receiving end of a lot of bad news like the RERA, which was thing, and the fact that affordable housing, only those people with empty parcels of land could take advantage of affordable housing. So I think what this has done, it has said that the government is looking positively at housing, people buying houses. So I think the sentimental impact on the real estate sector, because it's got beaten down with so much bad news, this little bit of good news will give a cheer. So definitely I would say valuations will creep up, but again it could be very stock specific and not simply buying the real estate index. Second aspect of it is that ultimately financing is very critical. So one of the things which is still a negative from that sector's perspective is the ability of NBFCs, housing finance NBFCs, to be able to lend. As you know, Tier 1 has been managing. Tier 2, Tier 3 NBFCs, because of the ILFS crisis, has seen a tightening of their yields in borrowing as well as unavailability of money. So that also has got to get freed up if truly the sector is to bounce back. So I would say without financing you can't buy a house. So you need to have availability of credit, and it's dried up from the NBFC sector because already even part projects which they had released, I think they have stopped.
Sunil, hold on to that thought, because we really need to focus on the market. Look at the kind of wild